Alright, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back. Today I'm here with a video that took me forever to record. I spent my entire day yesterday from morning till the end of the day. I think it was actually 2 days, not yesterday, but even so. I spent like 8 hours recording this video, so I do appreciate a lot if you guys could just share the video, you know, drop a like if this actually gave you some information that you may have been questioning yourself, like, does it, you know, doesn't it? What was supposed to happen? And since there's too much information, I also decided to divide the video in two. So this current video you're about to see, I'm going to show you what Atlas can stop with his barrier for every single champion, every single ability, even the ultimates, alright? Like, I'm going to show you everything that is possible. I'm just going to say this right now, a little spoiler. Characters are not involved into this, so they can go through the barrier even if they're ulting like a Willo flying, so that's pretty obvious. And then the second video will have everything that he can set back and or stop with his ults. So it's gonna be more like a setback in ult versus ults, which I'm pretty much like, you know, I'm pretty much trying to stop everybody else's ults with it and actually show how it works. So we're gonna cut into this. Again, if you guys can share this video, I would appreciate that a lot. Thank you so much if you do. And if you didn't, if you were just watching the video, thank you so much for being here. It's still pretty, you know, pretty good to actually see some recognition for the work that I've been doing here. It took me forever to do this shit, so now let's jump right into it, alright? Alright, starting off with Androxus. Androxus, this was in the beginning, so I didn't necessarily knew everything that was happening, so I did came across some problems. Apparently there's a bug on the Atlas barrier that if you are too close to it, so it being an enemy, of course, if you are an enemy and you're too close to it, the projectiles, the hit scans, every single thing you do and use will ignore the barrier. And that is there's a perfect example when I was using Cassie. I was too close to the barrier, everything was going through, which wasn't supposed to. But beyond that, if we go by logic and if we go by the test that I did, his normal shooting will not go through, his reversal will not go through, and his ultimate will not go through. Alright, as for the punch, I didn't test it, but it's kind of... there's other tests I did in the future of this video you will see that will show you that certain things will not go through. The barrier actually stops anything that deals damage, supposedly, except for a thing or two that I'm going to show you. So let's continue. So now for Ashe, as you may see in the footage, right around the end, that's when I shoot normally, and for some reason it passed because I was too close to the barrier, as I mentioned before. It may also be because I was using the talent that makes the barrier bigger, but it may not be. I think it's because when you're too close to it, it doesn't zoom. It's some sort of a weird interaction, almost like the power siphon of Terminus, which I clearly can't understand the hitboxes of this barrier, but it will stop the normal shooting from Ashe. It will stop the kinetic burst. It will not stop the, you know, the shoulder bash because that's a character going through, and it will not stop the shield because the shield, technically speaking, it is still, you know, a physical thing, and what the barrier is supposed to stop, it is actually, you know, damage attacks and so on, which clearly that is not. So moving on to the next one. Alright, right now we're gonna see Barik. Barik, it will stop, the barrier will stop the projectiles coming from the turrets. It will stop his normal attacks. I did not use the modifying for the slug, alright, for the slug shot, but it's pretty obvious. If it stops the other type of weapon, it will stop that one as well, because it is still a projectile either way. And then I tested it out against his ultimate, the flamethrower inside the Doom shield, and it does work. It does stop the fire, so we are already seeing here a little spoiler for Fernando as well. So now for Bomb Gang, this one is pretty obvious as well, but there's a weird interaction that I still didn't understood if it was a bug from the barrier or if it was actually just, you know, the normal standard. So his normal bombs will not go through, they will just simply disappear if they go through it. His Grumpy Bomb will disappear as well, but his Poppy Bomb went through like it was nothing. So it may have been because I was too close to the barrier, or in this case my wife was too close to the barrier, and maybe the Poppy Bomb just went through, because I can't show it to you on the Atlas screen, but the Poppy Bomb did go through, and you can actually hear it sticking right to my left. As for the ultimate, pretty simple. It doesn't stop it because it's a character itself, alright? So it's pretty impossible for that even to act. So let's jump into the next one. So this one is pretty simple. This is Buck. Both his net shot and his shotgun will be stopped completely by the barrier. And of course, his ultimate just makes him shoot faster with unlimited bullets, if I'm not mistaken, which means that it is the exact same thing as the initial shotgun. So no, it will not do anything whatsoever. Now for Cassie here, this is where the weird part comes in. The first initial test that I did with her, she managed to actually go with the normal projectiles, the blast shot, and the one that impulses you back. All of them went through the barrier for some reason, which doesn't make sense. Which, again, I may be because she was too close to the barrier. Then I went again and tested out a second time. Some of them did stop. I think that with the second test, this was pretty much after I recorded everything. I just went back and decided to test it again. My wife went with Cassie, and she managed to actually do it correctly. So everything was stopped by the wall, which I still don't understand why. I don't understand. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. The exact same abilities, the exact same projectiles, but we can still get a fair clue of which ultimates and so on will not stop, because there is an ultimate at least that will surprise you why doesn't it stop. Now this is the part where I have to apologize because the tests may have been done wrong, but even so. So for Dredge, his broadside and his normal attack, even the scuttle and the harpoon will all be stopped by the barrier. As for the ultimate, you will be able to cast it through. You will be able to cast it behind the barrier. It will activate against a wall behind the barrier and never stops on the barrier. But then I decided to test it by putting up the ultimate behind the barrier, Atlas on the other side of the barrier, and see if it would actually still do damage. And it did. The question is, may I actually, put the ultimate on the wrong place and maybe it was too close to the barrier? And again, like I mentioned, the bugs may have, ignored the barrier because it was too close. Perhaps. I'm not entirely sure. I can't tell it for sure, so we're gonna have to keep going. I'm not seeing this situation specifically happening, so either way, we'll just go with it. Let's go. Alright, now for Drogoz, this one is pretty simple as well. Both the fire spit, the salvo, and the normal shooting will be stopped by the barrier, but his ultimate will not. Pretty standard. Funny thing while I was testing this out is that somehow the head of Drogoz doesn't exist. I don't know if it was specifically because of this skin, or it's just Evil Mojo's hitboxes. I don't know. Either way, let's continue. So, funny thing for Evie, you may be thinking, okay, well, that's weird. So she only has 2 damage abilities, her ultimate and her normal shooting, right? So her normal shooting obviously stops it, so that is pretty standard. But her ultimate, the ultimate slowly goes forward the direction you have used it, right? But if you are near it and before the ultimate even touches the barrier, it will still deal damage for you behind the barrier. So it doesn't ignore it completely somehow. But when the core of the ultimate reaches the barrier, it disappears. So the ultimate gets completely nullified, but until then you will still be crippled and even take the damage before it hits the barrier. So it almost sounds like, snowball, because the snow globes, the talent where the ultimate lasts less. It does more damage, but it lasts less. It pretty much, that's the effect almost that it does. It just makes it last, but it still works, which is weird. Alright, for Fernando, pretty standard. Both his fireball, his normal shooting, and also his ultimate fire, the fire from his ultimate, will all be stopped by the barrier. There's no mistaking here. As for charge, I'm not even gonna test that because that's pretty much obvious. The charge, he's just going through the barrier. He's not a projectile, so you can guess that. So, for Furia, pretty standard as well. I don't even think this is even necessary to explain, but I just had to do the recording because I already know that people were going to ask about it. So the normal shooting will be stopped. The 3 orbs that she shoots when she dashes back with the wings will also be stopped, but the Furia beam, the Power Strike, will not be stopped. And just get this through your head. The Pirate Strike will never be stopped for any ability whatsoever in this entire game unless the talent says so. You know, the talent says you stop at an enemy or you stop at an ally. It touches a person and it stops. That's the only times it will stop. Beyond that is just when it reaches its limit and disappears. Alright, so continuing on. Alright, for Grohk, let's just put it like this. Grohk is a little bit harder to test when he's ulting because he starts moving on its own, whether you like it or not. And some of these recordings I was actually doing on my own with my wife's account right next to me. And, you know, he starts going forward and I was like, okay, I'm screwed. What am I going to do? But then I managed to actually turn back and to actually test it, and I managed to see that the ultimate will still deal damage to you. Funny thing, you can clearly see that the thunder is coming from Grohk, so it's going through the other side of the barrier, but for some reason the barrier will not stop it. So if you're ulting behind the barrier, you'll still be able to do damage to the other people on the other side of the barrier. As for his normal shooting and his little energy ball, his shock pulse or whatever, they will still be stopped by the barrier, which is pretty standard. Grover is pretty simple as well. Both his horizontal axe and his normal axe both will be stopped by the barrier, so we got that one. Next. Alright, for this one, this is not a specific character specifically. I decided to do this one based on Grover. I was imagining that some people would say, what about if he's ulting? Is he still healing his allies on the other side of the barrier? And so I decided to test that out. I can tell you for now that it works for every single character. You will be able to heal your teammates on the other side. This is the downside of this barrier. Compared to the Inara wall, the Inara wall blocks sight. This barrier does not. So you can heal another ally. You will see the little healing icon and you will be able to do it pretty easy, pretty standard. So yeah, we got that. So for Imani, this is actually pretty cool. I tested out everything. I tested out from the normal ice bolts, the fireballs, the fire cannon, the big ice bomb, and even the ultimate from shooting from the other side. And all of them was stopped by the barrier. So that is actually pretty cool. This is somehow effective towards the Imani special because of the cripples to completely nullify that 20-second cooldown bomb, you know, so it's actually pretty good. It will also completely nullify a fire cannon, which is pretty good if you ask me. So as I mentioned before, the barrier is kind of broken, and as such, if you're too close to it, it will completely ignore the stuff. So what I did was I tested out the ultimate 3 times. The first one, I was too close to the barrier and it went through. The second one, I was in a normal distance from it, and I managed to see that the ultimate gets stopped. This is for Inara, okay? Pretty standard and obvious. Because her normal shooting is also stopped by the barrier. But then I decided to test out if I hit it before the wall, would people still be stunned on the other side? And I can't recall the results right now, but I think it actually does not. If I'm not mistaken, it will not, all right? But either so, you have the footage on screen right now. And if it worked, it worked. If it didn't, I'm sorry, okay? So there we have it, the first example of something that the barrier will not stop at all. So, Jenos actually doesn't get too much affected by this wall because you will still be able to use the Void Grip through it. And his ultimate will work as well. So, yeah, that's it. His normal shooting is as obvious. It will be stopped because it's projectile slash a hit scan, because it will also stop that since we already seen Anjo and we're going to see Lian as well. But yeah, for the rest of his abilities will work perfectly normal. So now for Khan, this is actually really interesting. So, I may see some bugs in the future because of this, but I'll explain. Khan's normal shooting will be stopped completely by the barrier. As for his ultimate, it will also be stopped by the barrier, which means to me that, you know, we've seen some bugs where, since they changed the thing for Khan, it pretty much now creates some bugs where you get stuck like a statue in the middle of the map. So having this happening, and if there's a server issue where the connection, you know, the information is not sent back properly, I'm guessing this will happen again with a Khan if he if he hits the barrier by accident with his ultimate. So yeah. So now Kinessa, pretty standard, both her shooting and her mines in any of her shooting ways, which is the sort of assault rifle, sniper rifle, and then the ultimate. All of them will be stopped by the barrier, okay? So pretty standard with that, no need to make a fuss about it. So now for Koga, as you're about to see on screen, both his shooting and his claws will be stopped by the barrier, I'm sorry. But when actually using the ultimate, and if you're on the other side of the barrier and there's somebody really close to it, it will still go through, because the barrier will not stop it at all. At all. Lex, pretty straightforward. Again, normal shooting, his on pursuit or in pursuit, something like that, and his ultimate will all be stopped by the barrier. Lian, pretty standard as well. All of her abilities will be completely nullified by this barrier, including the ultimate. So her Q, her dash, her right click, her normal shoots, everything will be completely stopped by this barrier. Alright, for Maeve, there's not really much here to talk about. As you can imagine, she only has the blades that do damage besides the pounce. A pounce is her, so it won't count. Her normal blades, whether you're using the talent to give extra damage after Prowler or not, will all be stopped, okay? As for the ultimate, it's pretty obvious it will not stop it because it's a different type of ultimate. So as for Makoa, this is actually pretty interesting as well. Both his shooting and his hook will be completely nullified by this barrier, and so will his ultimate attacks, because although it's not considered a projectile, when getting close to it, it will completely nullify any damage that it tries to bring to the other side. So now you know that. So as for Maldamba, he may be the one who's going to lose the most against the barrier of Atlas, okay? So both his normal shooting, both his reload, both his gourd, guys, which is used for, it's also still used for damage, and even his ultimate will all be nullified when hitting the barrier. That's how crazy this is versus a Maldamba. You don't want to go Maldamba versus an Atlas, because if he puts a wall up, you try to heal your teammates with a gourd on point, or even try to use the ultimate, you hit that barrier, and there it goes. Goodbye, zero, finito. Nothing. You lose it all. As for Moji, again, pretty standard. Both her right head and her left head will not deal any damage throughout the barrier, and her ultimate will be completely nullified if hitting the barrier as well. Now this one I do have to apologize again. I forgot to test one single ability, but I'm guessing that if they did it with Maldamba, we'll probably deal it with Pip as well. So his normal shooting, his explosive flask, which is the one that deals damage slows and even sometimes is used to the talent to increase the damage on a target, and his ultimate will all be completely nullified by the barrier. As for his Mega Potion, I am not entirely sure if it will actually be destroyed by the barrier or not. I do apologize for that. But as I mentioned, just like it did for the gourd, I'm guessing it will do the exact same thing for the potion. Although I'm not entirely sure if the potion is actually physical. Drogoz, pretty straightforward. Again, pretty simple. Both his normal shooting, his rockets, and his ultimate will be completely nullified by this barrier. Pretty easy to counter Drogoz with this. So for Seris, this one is also understandable, alright? I already mentioned that you can heal through the barrier, but her normal shooting and her ultimate will be completely nullified by the barrier. As for her, her Rend Soul, I think, which is the one where she blows up the orbs that are stuck to the people, that has no effect whatsoever related to the barrier, because it's not a projectile thing that she's throwing. So that's pretty obvious as well. So we're almost reaching the end of the video here, so I apologize for the long video. That's why I wanted to divide them. As for Sha Lin, his normal shooting, his planted, and while in his ult, and even the explosive arrow will all be stopped. I think that in the video that you're about to see, it may have a stance where the explosive arrow or the planted arrow will go through, but I think that was because I was too close to the barrier again. I think it was a mistake, but even so, it's supposed to stop it because it's still a normal projectile, okay? Now here again, I think I forgot to record the smoke bomb, but even so, it will still destroy it as well. It will destroy her normal shooting. This is for Skye, of course. Her normal shooting, her poison bolts, her smoke bomb, and her ultimate will all be completely nullified against the barrier. Strix, pretty easy as well. Normal shooting gets disabled completely, both his sniper and his pistol. His flare also, and then his ultimate as well be completely nullified versus the barrier. Now, weirdly enough for Talus, I had a weird interaction with the punch, but we'll go there in just a few seconds. So his normal shooting, and even when in overcharge, will be completely nullified by the barrier. As for his ult, he will not be stopped by the barrier. You can still ult a person behind the barrier pretty easy. Now, when I did punch, depending on the specific spots that I was, it would completely nullify the hit or even the damage or the knockback on the enemies. But it depended on the position. It was really weird. So it's a hard thing to pull off, but I think you can still stop it as well. Not ready. So as for Terminus, this was the one that I wanted to show you the most. His normal melee attacks will not go through the barrier. His rune that he throws with his right hand will not go through the barrier as well. And his ultimate will be completely nullified. The damage will not go through the barrier. Alright? That's actually pretty cool as well, so now you know. I think melee attacks are all blocked as well. It's not just projectiles. So as for Torvald, this is a funny interaction here. There's multiple different interactions. So his normal shooting versus the barrier will not do anything. You will not be able to actually cripple the people, you know, with that beam ability. I don't remember the name right now. You will not even see a mark on the person to do it, but his ultimate works through the fucking barrier. I had Torvald go all the way back. My wife was playing this time on the specific clip. She was all the way back, and it worked. The ultimate would go through the barrier. I think it was because it was too strong to be stopped, or maybe because it's considered like a beam, almost like Furia. But since it doesn't go, like for example versus a wall of Inara, it doesn't go through. I'm guessing there's like an in-between sort of projectile, and then in the other far end, the beam from Furia. So it's sort of in the middle ground. But it will go through. So if there's an Atlas trying to put a barrier to save himself from maybe on fish market, so through a Torvald attack, don't be surprised that you will be knocked out of the map. They will work, alright? So we got that one done. So for Tyra, it's pretty standard as well. Her normal shooting will be completely nullified by the barrier. Her grenade and her fire grenade as well. Both of them will be completely nullified. And her ultimate just makes her shoot faster, so it will still be completely nullified as well. Then as for Viktor, Viktor is actually, again, weird because it does have a way to mark. His normal shooting will now not go through. His grenade will not go through, but his ultimate will. Because as long as you're using the binoculars and you can see the person behind the barrier, you will be able to mark them, so that's pretty standard as well. Then we got Vivian. Vivian, her normal shooting will now go through. Her drones, her sensor drones, will not go through as well. They will be completely nullified from it. And even if you're using the ultimate, it will still not go through the barrier. So, pretty simple as well. Then we got Willo, again another simple champion to understand. Her normal shooting will not go through, her seeds will not go through, and then her dead zone will be nullified as well. So this is something really nice to actually have this and stop a dead zone from coming up on point. Really, really nice. I love the idea. Now, as for Ying, this is another one that I'm still not, completely sure. But her normal attacks will not go through, okay? But when she sends the clones can go through the barrier because it's not, it's like a deployable, but it's like a physical thing. It's not a projectile. But I think that if she blows up before the barrier, it will deal no damage whatsoever, okay? So, pretty standard as well on that one. As you know, ultimate is... It's universal, like, related to her characters, her allies, so it has nothing to do with the barrier.
Nothing is possible.
Now Zhin I decided to go with Yomi just to make sure that, you know, since it goes through multiple enemies, the third attack, would it go through the barrier or not? And pretty easy to understand as well, no, it does not. None of his attacks went through, but his attack where he propels himself forward and does like a spin, it will go through, and his ultimate will also go through. Really easy to understand. And now finally, to end the video, Atlas himself. Everything that Atlas does will be completely nullified versus this barrier. His normal shooting, the setback for his enemies will be nullified, whether it's a bomb or a projectile or normal shooting straight away. And his ultimate will be completely nullified as well. So, pretty good. I hope that this video has gave you enough information, because there's a couple of interactions here that nobody was expecting. I may have forgotten, again, maybe the potion from Pip and so on, but even so, guys, this took me forever to do, and trust me, this is only the part of the barrier. We still have more to come on the next video, which is the ultimate and the setback versus every single champions, okay? So, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to share the video if you can, so we can spread out some information out there. And again, drop a like on this video. Thank you so much if you do. And I'll see you guys next time. Don't forget to check the next video. Bye-bye, guys. See you next time.